transition into the Sunday morning live. It's a very, very, very incredibly important time frame. Not just for the long term, this doesn't have much to do with. But as far as the short term pattern setup, it has a lot more to do with. And our short term mindset really does play into our long term capabilities of if we can properly diagnose what's going on, not just in the last couple of months or last half of year, but going forward, what we're trying to anticipate for the long term objective here for XRP. Now, we're going to go over the price action. We'll talk about the symmetrical triangle. We'll look at Bitcoin symmetrical triangle with how it's set up. And we'll look at the most immediate action that we have to pay attention to. But also, we don't want to lose our vision. What's happening right now is a lot of the XRP community is actually losing the vision of what's going to play out in the long term. So I've realized I need to do a better job too of, yes, we can talk about the short-term pain, but at the end of the day, we've got to make sure we don't lose that long-term objective view of what is going to happen in the outcome as we go forward. So this morning I would like to touch base not just on the short-term micro setup, but also we must maintain that objective view of the long-term analysis. So that's what we're going to go into. I want to get into a quick intro, and then I want to get right into this so we can hammer this out for about an hour. Tomorrow is going to be a little tricky with the way I do my content, even my live classes, because I've got them coming from my roof. As you know, I suffered some pretty significant damage to my roof, and it kind of caved in a little bit with the storms we had here. So I have someone coming out at noon tomorrow, so I may be doing my class a little early tomorrow before they get here. I'd rather do it early than late so that it's out there for everybody, but we'll talk about that later, especially into tomorrow. But for today, we need to focus on what's at hand. Good morning. 11:19 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Sunday, March 15th, 2026. I'm XRP Future Millionaire, and I reside in the great state of Michigan. And I really do feel like it's a very, very, very important time for all of us to kind of stand united when it comes to just XRP's price action, especially not to lose our mindset because of the short-term frustration. And believe me, I understand, I can feel it, I can see it, that there's a lot of short-term frustration for XRP holders. It can even extend into a longer period. But over the last 9 months, I've seen a lot of people lose faith. You know, I've seen a lot of people that are, looking at it not objectively at the whole pattern setup. So instead of starting in the short term, let's start from the wider viewpoint of where we're going for a longer scale, and then we'll break it back down into the short term when it comes to the symmetrical triangle we're in, after the breakout that we've had of the short-term descending triangle, and let's try to nail this home, or nail it to the wall, let's say, and try to put out a good analysis so that everybody from short to long term can understand this, but we'll kind of backtrack this from the long-term setup, and we'll try to work our way back in so that we can see exactly what's going on from a functional standpoint with XRP. So please make sure to hit that like button if you are in here. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to try to build ourselves back up. In the community, try to find newer people as well. But understanding that it's very difficult in this time because we're getting a lot of nonsense that's coming out from the leaders in XRP and Ripple. And a lot of people feel like they're being played, and I don't blame anybody for that. I actually agree with that standpoint that as a whole the community is getting played, but that's why we need to stick together, and we need to make sure from a charting perspective what we can control. The best asset we have is to understand these technicals, to follow the setup that we're being given by the higher players, and we can follow the coattails. We just can't get outside of ourselves. That's the number one thing. We cannot get outside of ourselves. We have to stay in a unified measure and see what's actually happening. It's great to hear all of the noise from others, but we have to have an objective understanding of why this is not a complete failure, why there is significant generational money to be made in the XRP token, but it has to be done right in every cycle. I am more confident today than I was in 2021 about this setup because it's actually playing out beautifully. And I know when there's short-term frustration, it can take our mindset away from that long-term objective. But starting today, I'm not going to let that happen anymore for anybody. I'm going to make sure that you understand it every single day when you come in here. I'm going to beat a dead horse, so to say. So you understand when you first come in here, you can be positive. You don't have to be negative about the price action. And this is the time in the cycle where more and more people decide that they don't want to pay attention to anything about XRP, and they'll come back when it starts to rally. However, if you have that mindset and you fall into that group, you're going to miss out on the buying opportunities. Right now, I just want to make sure you understand from a long perspective, from the macro view, we look great. We look great. Unless that descending wedge breaks down on the handle, we look absolutely fantastic. There's nothing to even be worried about. The long-term objective here looks absolutely phenomenal. And I think sometimes we get caught in the noise of a short-term price action. And 9 months is a short-term price action compared to going back 10 years, almost 9 years. To look at from last July to now is that short-term perspective. That would be considered the micro perspective. Now, the micro does build out the macro setup because the micro was micro and then it turned into a longer view. So we have a big cup that actually filled out. So that's one thing you have to remember. We don't have to question that. The cup has actually played out, which means that this has been a success. Now, once you fill out the cup, yes, there's going to be a significant downturn. And that's to be expected because you want to gap up every area below. And we want to make sure on the handle now that it forms a bullish handle, that it ends up playing towards our future objective. But these are the times they get rich. Not because of price action in the moment, but because if you understand the all-time setup and we work our way in, which we will today. So if you give me a chance to explain this over the next hour, we will most likely focus mainly on XRP. We'll touch a little bit on the 3Xs, XRP, XLM, XDC, and I'm going to do that every single day going forward. And we have to look at Bitcoin because Bitcoin's facing a symmetrical triangle right now and it's back testing. So we want to make sure we see this for the short term. But as far as the long term goes, if you're coming in here and you're worried about XRP, please don't be worried. The long term objective here is perfectly sound. We have a perfect cup. And the fact that we're forming a descending wedge on the actual handle is the most bullish possible formation we could have had on the handle. You've heard that again. This is the most bullish possibility we could have on the handle. There's no other setup that could have been more bullish than this. That doesn't mean we just go straight up. But what this means is we're going to try to finish filling out this handle. And if you give it time to work, you'll be able to find the proper alignment. So the weekly significantly oversold, starting to round a little bit. And the objective here would be to try to hit this third tap perfectly on the handle. Now, will it play out? That's where the micro comes in, which we'll work our way into the micro after. But as we can see, we have a support 1 back on February 3rd. And if you want to write this down, I don't care if you record this and share this to somebody else. I don't care if you record this and share it on your own page to try to give out some insight. You know, I don't. You can use this however you feel fit to try to help other people in the community. That's what I want. We'll also take a look at Brad Garlinghouse because he's getting roasted on X right now. I've seen it. We'll take a look at it and we'll talk about why. But first, we've got to get the chart under control. So on this descending wedge, you have the first hit of support out here in February on the 3rd. Second hit of support on March 31st. We haven't hit a third hit. The resistance tap, first one was in July. And that's where we bona fide ended the bull market in July of 25. Then we have a second hit here on Monday, about October 6th and on 2025. Then we had the third hit, which confirmed the resistance part of the descending wedge, which is phenomenal. That's on January 5th of this year. Now we're trying to find that cycle bottom here. So if we look at it from that perspective, we know we have a short-term descending triangle that we have not been able to break out of, which goes all the way up to $1.65 or $1.56. We got up above it a couple times in the micro, but we were unable to hold it. In the daily, it's already telling us that we're overextended. The daily time frame is telling us there's got to be some kind of significant correction here that will lead us into the next push. And that's okay. We've got overextended. We don't have a volume breakout. So what I anticipate, maybe could we come up here and retest that wave 5 or the wave E on the corrective phase? It's possible because we have a breakaway CME and FVG up in that area, which we'll look in with the micro analysis once we get past the macro look. But that does line up with the descending triangle. If we can't overtake it, it lines up with that 86-cent area. So when you measure it out, that pushes us out until the end of March. But we really need, it would be in our best interest to come down and tap that 86-cent area one more time. And could it extend out to August and play this out completely to the apex? It is possible. And that could bring us into the mid 50-cent range. But where you would like to start to build a position, if you're not in, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to wait here. We found swing trading opportunities, and there could be one developing again if that $1.40 holds. But we won't know until we get back above. Either hold that $1.40, and then we need to get past the old swing high of $1.45 from Friday. That's the objective here. But the daily time frame is telling us, please be careful. It's telling us, be cautious. We're overextended a little bit. We haven't had the proper volume flow. And on a Saturday into Sunday, this is the trap area. So don't get too excited. But also pay attention to the long-term objective, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to push ourselves in the proper positioning based on looking at the macro into the micro and understanding the possibilities. So please, if there's anything you've learned so far, we are in the most bullish setup you could possibly be in, and we've been watching this for 5 years. Together, we watched it round the bottom in 21 and hit the resistance. We watched it round for another 4 years approximately, 3.5 years, and form the actual cup. Now for the last roughly, I would say, for the better part of about a year and 4 months now, we've been watching the handle develop. And usually these kind of handles take anywhere from 16 to 24 months. And the reason for that is because of the length of time it took here. So now you're building up the over-aggressive nature when we had the run-up, and you needed that extra run-up to form the resistance of this descending wedge. Now, to tell you how bullish this is, we can only look at the fundamentals. So a cup and handle. Here, let me just read this into this. Interesting. A cup and handle with a descending wedge or falling wedge is highly bullish. The descending wedge acts as a typically short-term consolidation or bull flag. It indicates that while sellers are temporarily active, they lack conviction, allowing for a strong high momentum breakout to the upside. So the optimal structure, and this is just a learning for you, so that you can understand a little bit deeper, because after all, I want this to be educational based in here. And I really want to change the direction slightly so that we keep paying attention to that long-term outlook. So I'm going to be more positive even in the titles, because I believe we have to have that positive objective so that we don't fall into that negative mindset in the short term. Because if we do lose sight of the long term, we're going to lose this community. Not us in here, but the XRP community, the XP army, the ones who want to be holders or traders or visionaries. They're going to lose the objective. So just listen to this and build your mind into a positive, sustainable flow. So the optimal structure, the handle should drift downward or sideways, signaling a cooling off period where investors are not aggressively selling at lower prices, confirming a strong hands accumulation phase. And we know we broke up from 34 cents to start. And we also know, unless we were to break the mid 50-cent range, this handle is highly bullish. The descending fall, or it's also confirming a strong hands accumulation phase. The descending and falling wedge. A falling wedge is a reliable, approximately 68% success rate. However, with the way it's set up, I would up that to 78 to 82%. They're being very vague, but because of how the length of time it took to create that cup and the way it successfully created a newer higher high, while simultaneously creating lower lows, and we're waiting for the third lower low here in the weekly. That would be our, okay guys, we're ready. If we come down to 86 cents, my tune's going to change about the accumulation and the aggressive nature we need to take. And that's what we want. However, we need to look at the micro as well. So let's continue with this high confidence signal. A descending wedge pattern or a bullish flag within a cup and handle enhances the credibility of the setup. Extremely accurate. The volume action. Look for lower volume as the wedge descends. And what have we been getting? Much lower volume. See the breakout of the wedge when we first got into this descending wedge, how high the volume was? Now notice once we tapped the resistance here, even on the breakdown, volume decreased. We got up here, the volume increased. And now as the wedge is starting to break down, look how much that volume has decreased. This is a highly bullish consolidation. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it really is. So look for lower volume as the wedge descends with a sharp increase in volume. Excuse me. Look for the lower volume as the wedge descends with a sharp increase in volume during the breakout, which confirms the trend's continuation according to studies shared. So the entry, wait for the price to break out above the upper trend line of the descending wedge channel. We're not looking for that unless it breaks out earlier. We don't want to wait until that. Measure the distance from the high of the cup to the bottom of the cup and add that to the breakout point. And that's what I did in the basis. Now what we have, you want to have a stop loss. I don't like stop losses. It tells the market makers where to hunt your stop loss level. So what we're looking for is we're looking for the primary entry down at 86 cents when it taps this a third time, if and when it happens. Otherwise, there would be an entry point if it gets above the descending wedge, and you could go from that approach as well. You just don't want to get yourself trapped in the middle. So that's what I want. That's what I want to see. The weekly time frame's dumped out exactly like I want. The daily time frame or the monthly is broke down exactly how we want. The weeklies come here exactly how we want. Now, the one thing I would like to see is the daily to catch up if it's going to break down. However, we do have somewhat of a bullish setup in the short term if it were to play out. And we need to work our way in from the macro to the micro. I hope that makes sense for everybody. I really hope that this makes sense to the new viewers as well. So now that we see the macro, and it's extremely bullish in the macro, like that is not a pattern to be mad about. That is a pattern. I don't know about you guys, but Tom is sounding pretty dovish. This is dovish? Huh. I didn't know this was dovish. I thought this was a positive and a very bullish setting, which would be more hawkish for the future. Maybe dovish in the short term to see if we come down there. But I don't know. That's up to your guys' perspective. But anyhow, the longer term is very bullish. But we want to see that continued progressive nature, and it would be in our best interest to come down here for a third tap and finish this off. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Now, could you come up here, and could we technically come through and say it did something like that? You could. I just don't think it would be accurate enough. I think the most accurate interpretation would be exactly what we had drawn out. And it could be a little bit higher. There's no doubt about that. But I really do like the way it's drawn out, and if we can watch this and pay very close attention to this, I think we could capitalize in a way that most people, as they're looking at this, saying, you know, I'm just sick and tired of this. How many of you out there are just sick and tired? Bad guy, love it. How many of you are sitting out there right now and saying, I've just had enough? That's the mindset they want you in. So just when all else fails in your head, just remember this long-term cup and handle. We're having progressively lower volume as the price action progressively breaks down, and this is exactly what we want to see. And there's always going to be short-term price movements in both directions. However, in the short term, I just don't think we're there yet. Every time we get to a certain level right now, we just don't have the ability. So that's what I want us to remember, that no matter how bad it looks on the onset, it's still super bullish in the long term. And I am very excited about this. Like I said, I've never been more bullish from a long-term perspective now that our vision of that cup and handle has actually played out. I had to project that for many years, and now we don't have to project it anymore. I don't believe we have to be scared. I believe as a whole that we're actually in a very good spot. It's just this is the time when your education, your understanding of technicals can drive it home. We've been through this in 21 when we were making that middle hump. We've been through it in 23 and we were making the rounding of the bottom. And we've been through it in 25 and we had a big resistance tap where we could take profits. And now it's up to us to not get too emotionally charged, but to try to let this pattern work for us now. So now let's bring this into the micro. And the only way to really see the micro is to watch the micro. So right now we've been rejected again today by this bearish liquidity zone if we can't get above it, which is actually what I want to happen. And I know it sounds pretty not progressive to be like, oh, the macro looks so bullish, but we want the bearishness in the micro to break down. It's because we want that descending wedge on the handle to give us the best opportunity to break out. And we want the best pricing as well. So what we did is we formed a symmetrical triangle, but in the short term, if we break out of this, it's going to give us that upward volatility right now. If this broke out here and didn't break down, which it's a little bit dangerous, it could be trap-esque on a Sunday. We don't know before the futures opens. But if this broke out from the symmetrical triangle in the short term, and this is pretty early to break out. You really want to be out here about 70% of the move. This is only about 50%, which isn't impossible. But this would bring us up to that aforementioned $1.53, 54 level, which is just below the descending triangle. But I would preferably like this to come down and retest $1.35 again. Or if it holds $1.40, it at least gives us that advanced signal that this is the way in the short term. You know, and maybe, just maybe, that would allow us the ability to come out here in the ABCDE corrective. And this is the descending triangle, just so you know that we've been talking about and referencing. That's the breakdown point. And that's what has us targeting 86 cents until further notice. We've had a series of lower highs with stable lows. So basically a descending triangle if you're new or if you just don't know. And that's okay if you don't know. It's not your fault. You've just never been taught it. Like, let's face it. A lot of times we get so hard on ourselves and we're so bashful on ourselves, but we just don't understand, and it's not our fault. We're trying to find the proper education, and sometimes people lead you in the wrong direction for their own gains. But I believe as a community here, we can do better than that, and that's why we're going to do better, and we're going to lead ourselves into the proper way. So from an educational standpoint, you have a high, lower high, lower high, support, flat support, support that busted flat, which is a descending triangle. Now the technical drawdown would be 86.6 cents was the initial target out of this. Now it can come much lower, but the initial breakdown should be 86.6 cents in a short term. One way to avoid this is to get back up in the descending triangle above $1.56 and ultimately break back above $1.91. And that can change the short-term bearishness. And then maybe we could break out of the descending triangle early. However, you know, there's a lot that we need to see. A lot of confluency that needs to happen. So one thing we're watching for as this weekend ends would be the futures chart. And that would be the descending nature of this. Now the daily is overbought, so that's something we have to pay attention to in the micro. And we don't trade on the weekend, so we'll see where we open up here. Right now we're right about where we closed. No harm, no foul. The bottom here is about $1.34-ish, which as long as we hold that area, we could have a micro breakout sooner. But the moment that pattern, if it were to break down, then all of a sudden we start talking about the lower levels. But I don't want you to lose faith. These are the times where if we just pay attention to this and we see it from a macro, we really don't have to be afraid. And nobody has to be afraid. You can learn a lot and grasp a lot in these moments. Joseph Euler, thank you so much for the over 1 year in Tom's Army and gifting a sub this morning. Free Pal XL V, congratulations on getting a gifted sub with your first month with the emoji badge and me being abducted by aliens. The Cannabis Podcast, thanks for re-upping in Tom's Army for 14 months now. Thank you so much for that. Over 1 year and a very trusted mod. Don't forget to like the videos and subscribe to Tom's Army. Oh, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Chris, thanks for being in Tom's Army for your first month. Says, preach on, Tom. You've been the most accurate and honest person on all these YouTube channels. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Well, I do try my best. And from a positive standpoint, all the people that are in here this morning on a Sunday, over 90 people is great. Especially when the market's not exactly the most bullish for the last 9 months. I can't even thank you all enough for being here. And it's in our best interest to do this together now. This is a very bearish 3-hour candle. Unfortunately. See how these are angled down? These are engulfing to the downside right here. Even though you had a strong wick up, this is the buyers being exhausted and the sellers taking control to the point they angled it down. Had a second one, angling it down. So in the 3-hour time frame, it says, please be cautious. Please be cautious. That's what it's telling us in the 3-hour time frame. These are cautionary setups right now. So it's telling us just on the short term that we might be exhausting ourselves. We might be exhausting ourselves. And like I've said from the start of this, it really is in our best interest to fill out that descending triangle in the all-time cup and handle. So going back to the symmetrical triangle, not in the futures, and if you're not aware of the futures, that's just Chicago Mercantile Exchange. It's closed on Friday evening until Sunday evening, so that'll be opening up tonight. So we'll be able to get a better viewpoint when we come back online. Now, this is the first area today where we're looking at a symmetrical triangle trying to break out. However, look at the daily. The daily's telling us with no significant volume breakout that we're exhausting ourselves in the short term, which is fine. We already know this. We know in the short term with the prospering of war and stuff like that, that it's going to be pretty tricky here. The 3-hourly is giving us a very key signal here that that's a spinning top. Now, after the angling pointing down, this looks like a spinning top candle, and all that means is we're running out of steam in the area. Significantly overbought in the 3-hourly and the stochastic RSI. And I really like that indicator over the RSI, which is the relative strength index. The stock RSI, the stochastic, that tells you a much more in-the-moment setting. As for the RSI, bases it more on the long and to the in amount of progressive nature. The stochastic is more about what's happening today versus what's happening 5 weeks ago. Even though it pushes out that far, it's telling you a progressive nature. So learn about the spinning top. This is just the bearish doji right now. Even though it's green, it's telling us we really need to be careful unless volume breaks out. That's what it's telling us. And with this angling down, that's telling us that this was a failed candle. And if we make a new low here, that's the key. Now this 3-hour candle would have to close and make a new low below $1.4122 to confirm this bearish nature. Now if it breaks out and fills out this wick, it could just be a fake out. But with where everything is at right now, it's telling us that we need to be careful right now. And that's one thing I can teach you. I can teach you all these pattern formations in the moment for free every single day, as I've been doing this for 5 years on March 24th. So we're 9 days away from my 5-year anniversary on YouTube. And the cool thing is I've not missed one single day of doing this. So, you know, if that leads to a little bit of credibility, or if it leads to a little bit of guidance that I can give you, because you know I'll be here every day no matter what, I think that's a good semblance for us to just keep showing up together. Because again, if you're just tuning in, this all-time pattern, let's rehash this again. The all-time pattern is extremely bullish. There's no more bullish cup and handle, in my opinion, than when you form a descending wedge on an all-time cup and handle. And this is the all-time chart pattern for XRP. And I know, because a lot of people tell you it's going to $1,000 tomorrow and $10,000, you can't get excited about price movement to $6.41. But let me tell you, that is extremely bullish, because what happens after you get up there? Okay, so let's just say this fills out, hits this bottom, starts to break out, and actually comes up. Well, first you would come up here, and then you'd probably consolidate a little bit, try to form a little flag. And then if it comes up, once you come up here, don't expect an immediate breakout. So once we hit this line, expect a back test, maybe even up to 50%, so that we can do that kind of perspective. But once you build that line and we consolidate, contract, get out all of the stronger players or some of the ones that want to get out early, once you make that consolidation back, the next move up is where you get into the double digits of $10 and higher. And that is what I aspire to get to. That is what this whole thing is about. That first move from $10 to $20, because you talk about an investment in the beginning of a couple $1,000s that could turn into $100,000 to $200,000. That would be an incredible movement for the community. It would be an incredible movement for anybody who's struggling, especially with the way finances are going right now. Trust me, I get it. Things are becoming a lot more expensive, and the patience part is hard because things are expensive. A lot of people are losing their minds because they need it now. I can't wait until tomorrow, right? So try to lose that short-term negativity and keep understanding that it's that short-term frustration that can lose the long-term vision. So we've got to make sure every day to look at the long-term vision, but not lose sight of the short-term bearishness. And I can do that every single day. We can do this. Well, I can't do it alone. I need all of you. I need all of you to help me with that. And you're doing a great job doing it because you're paying attention and you're offering me insight. And that's the best thing that I could ever ask for, is getting the insight from all of you. So remember, this cup and handle, that descending wedge is super bullish. It's super bullish. We just might be a little early here. But as soon as this plays out, we're going to go up to levels that I know a lot of people still don't think we can get to $6.50. As much as a lot of people want it to go to 1,000, they don't even feel like we can hit 641. That's the true target out of this cup and handle in the short term. That's not the only target. And I think that's where we lose a lot of our vision too. Is we're like, oh, it can only go up to $6.41. Well, imagine it does this, breaks out, and then it builds its handle again. What happens when you build something like that, back testing the prior all-time high, and then breaks out? If we create a big flag like that, that's what's going to change the game. That's what will essentially change the game. And it's going to be super difficult for anybody in retail once this plays out. These are your last moments in this descending wedge to get in and any viability. Any viability. Once this pattern ends up breaking out, it's over. You're not going to be able to do it in retail. It's already hard for retail when it was at $3.40 and $3.70. Still hard at $1.40. No, not 20. It won't take until 2030. This pattern is set to do its job at the latest by August of this year. And then it would take a little bit, but it's going to make a pretty aggressive run up to $3.40, $3.20 once it breaks out. It's not going to take until 2030 for this initial movement. It takes time, but while it's making that progressive move, I promise you, you're not going to care about if it takes a year or two once it breaks out of that wedge. Once it breaks out of that wedge, every single person who's a skeptic, who doesn't think progressively, is going to eat it. You know, and they're going to be very disappointed. So your goal here is to not get burnt out. You're not trying to get burnt out. We're trying to pay attention to the understanding of the macro, but not getting burned out means we understand the micro more than anybody. We have to understand what the big players are doing. We have to understand how to be the plankton, so to say. We can only eat off the big players because we aren't the big players. They use retail as the liquidity, but that doesn't mean there's 5% of retail that makes it big. 5%. We're the 5%. I promise you. We've been proving that over 5 years, that we can be the 5%. Don't be the 95%. Be the 5% who understands it deeper. Does this make sense to everybody? I'm just saying, I think this makes a lot of sense. And if we pay attention, now, just because we're ultra bullish in the macro doesn't mean the micro has to follow suit. It never has. The micro needs to build the macro positioning. So in the micro, we have a spinning top here in the 3-hourly. The 3-hourly is very, very interesting, to say the least, because it's showing us a short-term downward tug. The 4-hourly, yes, it looks like an inverted hammer, but based on what we're seeing, this very well could turn itself to a downward tug here. And it is telling us we're in a symmetrical triangle after the breakout of that short-term descending triangle, which means $1.35 should hit. Unless $1.40 is the ultimate support, it should hit. I see a lot of laughing emojis, which is okay. And I see a lot of cool emojis as well. But, you know, as much as you might be a hater coming in here, or you might be a lover, just keep it in the proper perspective. You're allowed to hate XRP. In fact, look at all the people hating on Brad Garlinghouse. If you need a laugh this morning, go no farther than looking at Brad Garlinghouse's X account. He is getting lit up. He's getting lit up. So, it's, so Brad said, let's see where he was getting lit up here. I can't remember which one it was because there's so many different ones that he puts out here and people are starting to hate on. So somebody commented about the XRP ETFs have actually held up pretty well despite the massive pullback in price. They've taken in a cumulative 1.4 billion since launch, and a lot of people are saying, how does this help the XRP price? In the short term, it doesn't, but it builds the ecosystem. So now Brad Garlinghouse has to come out and basically the only thing he can do is start to fight fire with fire, and to me, that's not the right approach. He says spends his days working on how corporates will lead the next wave of crypto adoption. Renet says the office of the CFO is waking up the power of digital assets and stablecoins, looking outside of market fluctuations of the actual utility of these technology of internal treasuries, operations, vendor payments, payroll, and much more programs. And this is the longer term vision. I know a lot of people look at XRP and they're like, oh, it's at $1.40. Trust me, I get it every single day when I try to talk about how much adoption there's been. The price, you cannot just look at the price when it's building the handle. Of course, that's where it's going to start to break down. That's the whole point of a cup and handle. The handle is very bullish, but bearish amongst the sellers in the short term. You have to remember with the cup, how it built the rounding in 21 and we had to wait for the 34 and 28 cents to round the bottom. It looked super bearish until it wasn't the 370. Now it's building the actual handle. Of course it looks bearish. And that's by design of a descending wedge. It's flushing out all of the sellers in that wedge. But once it gets put there in a cup and handle, it's very, very, very bullish. And I can't wait until we get to the day when that cup and handle finally hits the floor on that descending wedge a third time, assuming it does. And then you can start to see the way it ends up progressively breaking in a very quick fashion. It's not going to be slow when it happens. So Garlinghouse is he's getting very, a lot of people are whitewashing him right now, which is kind of funny. But what's he going to say? Garlinghouse can't come out and say, he can't speak the real truth. But yeah, go through this. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but a lot of people are not very happy about what he's been saying, and it's kind of funny when you read through it, actually. But that's neither here nor there. I need to focus more on the price action because we're already, how far are we right now? 37 minutes in, wow. So, from the macro, you see how extremely bullish we are. From the micro, you see the bearishness that's setting up. Brad is a scammer. Hey, I've been saying it from the beginning. He's trying to take our liquidity by giving us false hope in a time that you're not supposed to be positive. You're supposed to stay positive, but you still have to understand what's going on in the cycle. So I will continue to point to that cup and handle on the descending wedges, the most bullish setup you could possibly get for XRP. We just have to let it play out. Big Dog, thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 6 months with the XP Predictor and giving a $1.99 super chat. Thank you so much for that. Areli, welcome in, says hit the like button. Yeah, we've had 71 likes, and we got about 110 people in here this morning, which is great. It's awesome. I love seeing it. Thank you so much for that kind of support this morning, just by viewing. Let's see. Oh yeah, Bitcoin we need to talk about as well, because Bitcoin's in a symmetrical triangle. Yeah, I don't really look at X either, Bearded Viking. I just kind of try to pay attention to what Garlinghouse and Ripple and Monica Long and, some of the other ones say, just to kind of see a normal rendition. So if you're new here this morning, what did I lead with? I led with the cup and handle. But what did I also show you in the micro? Why? Just because the cup and handle gets us super excited, why you still have to pay attention to the micro transgressions. A lot of people ignore the micro, and they just say, I'm going to buy now and hold forever. I'm going to try to change your mindset about not doing that. You want to buy when it's at the appropriate levels. Right now in the 3 hourly, it's given us a warning sign. So now it's going to be defined by the next several candles here to see if this plays down. That's a spinning top. The candle before that was a bearish engulfing to the downside. After a progressive bounce, it pulled all the way back down. And now if we get a close underneath $1.41, let's say 20, to close below that, it's a super bearish indicator. For the short term, with the short term, Big Dog, thank you for another $2.99 super chat. I appreciate that. I don't really pay a lot of attention to Flare. I think Flare is a siphoning coin because they give you out free Flare all the time if you're a holder of XRP. That's no way to build a long-term structure. I think Flare is more of a distraction. I don't like Flare, personally. Mr. Stotts, thanks for being in town during 6+ months with the XP Predictor. You and Mrs. Stotts has been listening in the background, painting some black sand. Good morning. Good morning to you as well. Give Mrs. Stott my love as well this morning, my friend. Appreciate both of you. Crispy, what's going on with Flair? It's the general nonsense with Flair. I just think it's a distraction. I really do. I don't know how anybody could get progressively richer with Flair unless you buy the big dumps. With them giving out free tokens. It's just like printing the US dollar. You can't just be giving out tokens and expect it to have a progressive boom. And there's way too many of them to begin with for what it does. But that's just my perspective. That's not everybody's. What I'm hearing about the Clarity Act, Brad, is a tool. Yeah. I mean, he's lying to every single person saying the Clarity Act is good for retail. It's actually good for banking and industry. The institutions. It's not the best thing for us. But that doesn't mean XRP is not going to have significant price growth. It's just it has to go at a certain perspective. See what's happening in the 3-hourly? I don't claim to be a rocket scientist, but I definitely know what's going on in the charts. And from a free perspective, if you just watch me every single day, you're not going to find the information anywhere else. I mean, I'm not trying to be that person, but I've gone through other people's channels, and I've literally tried to find somebody else who's honest. I can't find anybody. Honestly, I can't find a single person in the XRP community that'll give it to you straight. And that's okay. You know, they all have their job to do, too. They do it a different way than I do, and who's to say who's right? I just want to make sure this community succeeds and doesn't get bent over. That's my objective. My objective is to have as many people who are fans of XRP be very successful in the future. Notice how the 3-hourly is starting to break down somewhat here because it was a spinning top to start. And now let's see if it does progressively come down and make a new low. That's what I want to see. It came up to the bearish zones, liquidity zones. We came up over and it's a rejection so far. And it's coming down. Now we need to see in the next 2 hours if we do have a close under $1.4120. That would be our key signal that we're coming down at least to the bottom of the descending, or the symmetrical triangle. And that's higher lows, lower highs, meeting together, forming an uprising triangle. Not an ascending triangle, which would be flat resistance, higher lows. This is higher lows and lower highs, which makes a symmetrical triangle. So I would encourage you to write these terms down and then go look it up and understand them. There's no secret in technical analysis other than, you know, being oblivious to what's going on. Now, we still have the option, if it breaks out here and holds, that it could break to the top side, and that could get you up to $1.53. It's just, out of the scenarios we're looking at right now, it's the least likely because of volume portfolio. 2-hourly is pulling down. But we'll see again. The buyers and sellers are exhausting themselves, and in lieu of a big breakout of volume, look at where this ended this candle. It's going to engulf the start. Now, it didn't make a new low, which leaves it on the fringe. It came down, but it closed above the body of the candle before. So it leaves us in a weird position. Osher been pretty accurate using just astrology. Kind of interesting to me. Hey, I like the astrology side. I don't know who that is, honestly. But yeah, that's interesting, my friend. I'm glad you shared if anybody wants to take a look. I don't know who that is, so I'm not going to confirm nor deny, but I trust Sola Jeffy very much so. So if he's saying it, I have no reason to not believe him. He's very honest in this community. He's actually been very helpful, too, so I put stock in what some people say. Big Dog, thanks for another 99 cents. I appreciate that super chat, my guy. So in the 3-hourly, got about an hour and 59 minutes, so again, the symmetrical triangle in the short term might be bearish. You know, where we're at right now might still be pretty bearish. But long term, we are not bearish. We're not bearish long term at all. 4-hour candle closed in the middle. Still an inverted hammer, which is going to be defined by the next couple of candles. So this is where you have to make a decision. Are you going to fall for the short-term noise, or are you going to continue to watch the perspective of long-term doings? And again, if you're just tuning in, this is why you need to be very, very bullish from a macro. Even if you're concerned about the micro, like I'm very concerned about the micro, as I've been until this descending wedge either breaks down or taps the third support. Either or I'm fine with. I prefer for it to go to the lower levels because we can make a lot more bank in the long term. You know, so Cannabis Podcast. Have a great Sunday. Be blessed, my friend. God bless. And says, gotta run. Have a great Sunday. Please be safe, my friend, and I appreciate you coming in. And I look forward to what you find out in the end of this video. Elmer Fudd, have a good day. Oh, no, you're still here, and thanks for being a trusted mod in here. It's good to see you in here, my friend. Big Dog, thanks for another $4.99 super chat. I really appreciate that pay it forward mentality. Now with the 4 hour or the weeklies, this technically, I mean, it's pretty even to both sides. We're not finding any volume here. But if you're, I know there's a lot of people coming and going. Most people are actually deciding to stay this morning, which is nice to see. Make sure that like button is, we got about a 70% like ratio right now, which is actually pretty damn good, and I appreciate it. But pay attention to the cup and handle. If you haven't been in here, a descending wedge on the cup is highly bullish. So a cup and handle with a descending wedge or falling wedge. I don't like calling it a falling wedge. I know it technically is, but when I call it a falling wedge, and it might be wrong, I like when the back of the triangle doesn't meet and it's kind of open like that, and then I'll call it a falling wedge. I like calling it a descending wedge when the triangle meets like that. I know it's pity of me or childish, but that's just how. But a cup and handle with a descending wedge is highly bullish when the handle is a descending wedge. The descending wedge acts as a typically short-term consolidation or bull flag and indicates while sellers are temporarily active, they lack conviction, allowing for a strong high momentum breakout to the upside. And we usually want to wait for 70% of the move. And right now, this would be a little early. 70% gets us about the beginning of June. That doesn't mean that's when the breakup would start. It means if it comes down here by the end of March, early April, it could work its way back up. And by middle of summer, late summer, early fall, we're going to get that progressive big outbreak. Then we'll retest the all-time highs. And then at the end of it, the way this pattern's setting up is already giving us a built-in target. And I know for a lot of people, they're going to look and say, well, how is it going to get to 641 if we can't even break $1.50? That's because we're doing this consolidation. We're building the consolidation. And in the short term, said you look like we're building a head and shoulders. I can't disagree with you because, in my opinion, we already built the head and shoulders. And we failed to break past the right shoulder. So right now, in my opinion, you built a shoulder over here, and I think in the 4 hourly might be the best way to show it. You built the shoulder over here back on around February 6th. You built a head around February 15th. And as of right now, we built a right shoulder at $1.50-ish, $1.55 on February 26th. Now we've just been a long-term consolidation which forms a symmetrical triangle. And right now, this could be the gatekeeper to how we do break down to that next layer. I'm not willing to call it a breakdown yet because we still have the possibility here of breaking out because we came out of a descending wedge. I'm still not convinced 100% that we're not going to finish out a wavy expansion to confirm the breakdown area because that's a breakaway gap. The Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the fair value gap in the same area, that's considered a breakaway gap. And all that means is it's telling us that the bear market continued and now it's had an extended time before coming back and retesting it. So it's either we wait to retest it and then we get on top side. It's going to confirm the continuation out of a bear market or a confirmation out of a bear market. And when you get over the top, you can start talking. Maybe we're flipping back into a bull market, but ultimately it's going to have to come above that descending triangle resistance. So that's a breakaway gap defined as letting us know that we're still in a bear market. Or when we get back above the breakaway gap, it's going to confirm our move from the bear market and possible back into the bull market. And in this symmetrical triangle, if it breaks out, it would get us to about $1.54. But if it comes back down to support, we're looking at about $1.35. The gatekeeping of this pattern is to stay above $1.40. And then Bitcoin would have to stay above. And it's doing a good job right now for Bitcoin. It backtested. We have to go to the other chart. It backtested its own. And we could call it a symmetrical triangle. Or we could kind of call it a descending wedge breakdown, which might actually work as well. And it's back testing it. So if that happens, we've got a lot of liquidity up there at about 77 to 80K, all the way up to 82,000, which we could in fact come up there first. And right now the technical target, if it breaks out from here, where it actually hit the back test, is right around 78,352. Oh, is she? Okay. 78,352. And as long as we stay above this, that's where we would go in this short term. And then that would most likely allow XRP to break out into that, possibly all the way up to $1.70 if that's the case. But we really do need to see. It's a Sunday. We're waiting for the futures market. As of right now, we're still doing what we want to do. It's just we haven't been able to break out of the area. We're not seeing that progressive volume spike as of yet. But we are tapping a lot of liquidity zones, so we'll have to watch this from a real perspective here and see if it can actually do this. Actually, it's a little bit lower than that. Let's actually make that closer to 78. Yeah, 78,000. But we do have a big liquidity box, which we put down here, up at about 79, and then there's more up over the top. I put every single one of those boxes over the top are liquidity on the heat liquidation map. So just pay attention to those levels if we do make the breakup. So there is a chance that we don't have to come all the way down to the descending wedge support. But is it likelier to come down or to break out now? Well, Bitcoin's telling us right now that we've got a chance. However, this is a reversal doji here, so it's going to be defined by this couple of candles. We do have a golden cross here in the 4-hourly, which is defined by the 20 cross and the 200 if you use the exponential moving averages. Some people wait because they don't use the 20, 50, 100, 200. They use the 50, 100, 200. But I like to use the 20-day all the way out to the 200 because it gives you the short-term perspective. So that's what we're looking at here this morning. So I'd love to hear any questions. I'd love to hear any questions as we continue to look at this potential here. 2-hourly for XRP is pretty interesting because it put in that reversal doji. And now it hasn't been able to break back above, and we're breaking down in the stochastic RSI. The 3-hour put in a spinning top right now, which is generally a bearish reversal with the way it's looking. The buyers got aggressively bought out by the sellers, and it's angled down. You can take... Oh, here. She already went outside? Oh, okay. Okay. I don't know if this brought everybody back. I tried. I guess we're... Look at 40% of the audience left. I don't know if anybody's still here or not. I had to reset it. Unfortunately, I lost 40 people or 45 people. I knew something was wrong when everybody started leaving. That's a shame. We had 107 people in here. Now we only have 63. Yeah, no, I had to reset it. Unfortunately, 40% of the people are going to lose out on the last part of this, but that's okay. I appreciate all of you staying who stayed. It's not their fault that YouTube, they tried to shut this live off just now, unfortunately. But I found a trick to use. I shut the internet off and then I turn it back on and it allows me to reconnect. So at least that worked. So for anybody who stayed put, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it did cut off, David. YouTube tried to end my live early, which they do sometimes, but I found some tricks up my sleeve that I can use. So now to trick their algorithm, I just turn off my internet and turn it back on, and then it reconnects me if I allow it. So at least it did just now. So some of you are missing the XDCTA in 60 seconds. Are you really? It's cutting off again? Oh, that's a shame. Is it cutting off again? Let's see. Yeah, mine is showing it working fine on my end. It's okay. I know YouTube doesn't like it, but I'm going to be positive. I'm not going to be negative from now on. I want to be very positive. I want to be very inviting, and I want to show the actual potential here now. Instead of focusing and being so mad about the short term, I think it's in our best interest to have kind hearts, be positive, and show it from the outward in. So then when we're doing this, we can actually look at it positively. Instead of, you know what weighs us down if we're very negative? It weighs on your heart, mind, and soul. And then you can't look at it properly. I firmly believe that. I do believe that. So, again, to stay positive, just make sure when you're in doubt, and I'll try to do a video today. Wow, look how long it's taking. This is craziness. But I'll try to do a video today, again, about the rationale of the long term versus the short term and why we have a lot to be thankful for with the all-time setup. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not sugarcoating it. You know, I'm very honest when I talk. I would not lie to you about how bullish the all-time pattern is. I would not lie to you. But I think I need to do a better job of maintaining that composure about let's pay attention to the long term while we're in this micro consolidation, because all we're in is a micro consolidation. Wow, 100 of you are almost back here. That is an incredible blessing. Thank you guys so much for coming back. Wow. That's incredibly awesome to see that kind of support this morning. Good to see it. So good. I appreciate that, everybody. You have no idea how much you all mean to me. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. This morning, yeah, I know it's come down a cent while we've been on, but that's because we put in a spinning top in the 3-hourly, and that's a bearish reversal, possibly in the making. But from the long term, guys, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we get the best possibility of a buy. The monthly is engulfing right now to the downside. So far, it's broke back through the body into the wick. And I would love to see by the end of the month us down at 86 cents. To finish off, the faster we finish off this descending wedge, and it's preferable to go to the downside. And the only reason I say that is we can make a heck of a lot more profit long term if it comes down and fills this out. I know the short-term buyers who are buying within this handle as it's coming down will be hurt, but that's why I keep saying we've got to be the 5% who make money in crypto, not the 95% of retail who has to push it over to the hierarchy of the central banks, the institutional investors, and the market makers. We're very small fish in the sea. We're the plankton. We are very small. We make up a small identity. But when you're watching, the cup and handle is the most bullish you can get in technical analysis. To put in a descending wedge on the handle is literally the single most bullish outlier that you can have before a progressive all-time breakout. And this is where the most amount of contraction happens in a short amount of time. And to be honest, look at the length of time this only is. It would start in the end of January, and the longest that it can go is out until August. That's not a very long consolidation. It's less than 10 months. And then as long as it holds, oh man, is it going to be a very progressive push. It's going to be something special. And I honestly can't wait until we get to that timing. I crave it. I pine it. I've just got to find a way to keep as many of you interested and as many of you coming back to watch the day-to-day progressiveness, so that we can be part of the cycle like we were in 21 when we bought the bottom and sold the top, like we did in 23 and sold the top in 25. The next time we buy the bottom and sell the top, the next time should be at minimum $8,600. It will turn into $64,000 on the next push. How does that sound, everybody, if you had an $8,600 worth of XRP and it turned into 64 grand? I think that would be pretty darn good. I can't think of a single person, well, I can think of a lot of people that would be mad because all they keep hearing is 4 digits, 3 digits, 5 digits. I'm just looking at 2 digits from the 10 to 20. That's going to be bee's knees. Now to go into something else, and I told you, that spinning top was the early warning sign of a bearish 3-hour breakdown. I wasn't lying. I don't lie. I honestly try to tell the truth. I don't try, I do tell the truth. Crispy, thanks for the $1.99 super chat, and also being in Tom's Army for your first month with the emoji badge of me being abducted by aliens. Peanuts for the squirrels, thanks for your honesty. Oh, I appreciate that. The squirrels will be very happy. Very happy. So now we're trying to see in the 3-hourly if that spinning top was actually telling us the breakdown. Let's get into the 3-hourly. Let's go to the symmetrical triangle chart. And now it's turned into, let's see, a progressively worse spinning top with it angled down. And now we've actually made a new low in the 3-hourly. So if we close here, that's a bearish confirmation in the short term that we're over aggressively pushed up. I really do think it needs to break down more than break up. I do. Yes, if it breaks up, we could go up there, but the odds of us breaking up right now with that cup and handle for any sustainable movement is not very, it's not a very good outlook right now. But long term, it's so hard with some of the mind bending you get across social media because everybody wants you to think that It's always going to go up. And that is so, I don't want this community to get hurt. Don't we love XRP as a whole? Like, I love XRP. I love XLM. I love XDC. I have a lot of faith in XDC because of what it does with the R3 Corda. But it makes me a little sad, and not sick, but it makes me sad to see how many people who love XRP are just getting bent over or just getting misinformation when all's we're all craving is real information. You, me, and everybody else. You know, we're all craving the real information. XDC has had a pretty sustainable drop down. It's had a pretty big drop down. We're still in a descending, broadening wedge, in my opinion, on this consolidation, which is still bullish, but it still means we could come all the way down to 2.7. If we want to come out to a C wave, which we failed so far, that gets us back up to the overall breakdown that we haven't retested. 2.2 cents underneath would be a pattern reset. So, you know, XDC to me long term is probably going to have the most profitable gains, probably out of any utility token, just because of where it's at and what it's doing with the expansion. So, what did Maple Man say? Tom, if we don't get the third tap on support for XP, will that come back to bite us in the ass later? No. As much as it's in our best interest, as long as we break, unless it goes up to $1.78, $1.80, and it gets rejected on the descending wedge, which if it doesn't come down for a third tap, that's more than likely going to happen. But once it breaks out and confirms the breakout of the descending wedge, that means that it left the third tap, which is not in our best interest for consolidation, but it is possible. But it shouldn't bite us in the ass long term, because then you'd be all the way out to 340 and you're not going to come all the way back down in the descending wedge. Then it would just be an overall breakdown. But it's a great question because it is in our best interest to come down and tap it a third time, in my opinion. Just from what I've seen over my years of technicals, the way that patterns play out, it's in our best interest to fill out that descending triangle target down to 86 cents and some change. And then that also lines us up perfectly for the cup and handle retest on the descending wedge. But that's a great question. Honestly, it's a great question. Big Dog says, Tom, I know your TA is all facts, but I'm having a hard time seeing high prices when all these tokens keep unlocking billions. Yeah, that's definitely an outlier that you gotta kind of keep in the back of your mind, because we get 1 billion every month. But remember, there's been new passages now where Ripple is allowed to now sell these without any kind of documentation, and they can kind of hand them off for future allowance. So now the institutions can take some of these free tokens that are, well, not free, but some of the tokens in escrow, and they can now give them out for future payment. They don't need to just keep them. Now, December of 28 is that big problem. And what if this lined up where that all-time cup and handle, watch, just out of perspective, what if the all-time cup and handle breaks out? I know it's going extremely slow. And this breaks out, and then when we get up here, it actually takes us out closer to 2028. And then we have the unlocking, and that's how we get the breakout all the way up to that 641 area. And then what if they unlock all of those tokens in 2028? And that's how we break back down and back test the lower levels, and it causes a 50% drop when they unlock the rest of the tokens from the escrow. That would be pretty interesting if that's how it lined up. That would be pretty interesting. So, that's a great question, though. That's a great question and a great viewpoint about the escrow unlock, because there is 1 billion tokens that comes into play each and every month. So I like your thinking. I really do like your thinking. And with the Clarity Act, again, like the Clarity Act now, it's not even as close as people think. Now another passage has to be made before the Clarity Act. They came up with some other documentation that needs to be passed before they can even pass the Clarity Act. So I'll be interested to see how they finalize that in the Congress and government. So it's a good question from it. You guys are asking great questions. Great questions. XLM this morning is at 16.7 cents. Much like XRP, it's in a very big consolidation phase. The only difference with XLM compared to XRP is that it's in a falling channel here. It's been in a falling channel, and that could technically lead us all the way back down to, if it comes to this pattern support, to 9.5. Right now we broke out of a short-term pattern consolidation, but we still need to retest at 15.6 to make sure. In the 4-hourly, looks like it put in a spinning top of its own. It has an angle down with that little wick down, which is not necessarily great. Looks like a bearish doji reversal right now. 3-hourly is also a spinning top that's red. It started up high, pushed down lower. Now we need to see if we get... These candles are not looking in our favor in the short term. But if we get some volume, I suppose it could break to the top side. We technically have a target a little bit higher on a breakout. So, just opened a fortune cookie. What is coming is better than what is gone. Interesting. Interesting. So, I mean, that's basically my perspective this morning. I gotta go do some family stuff. That's the perspective I have this morning. I hope this update helped, this live. I hope the perspective was good. I hope it makes sense to all of you. H-bar still broken out of the channel, the falling channel, which is bullish. However, because of how we've been acting right now, it very much could fall back down. Let's see a short-term analysis after the breakout of that. Let's see, so we broke out here. Kind of want to do it like this. I think this would be the most accurate. Yeah, absolutely. Because then you start with the resistance here. Ooh, actually, we could do it like that because we've hit 3 taps of resistance. Let's overrun this real quick. And this could push back here because of the way we're doing it. Interesting. That's a inverted right shoulder consolidation right now. That's pretty interesting. But yeah, thank you all so much for the support. I appreciate it. And if we were to break up with H-bar, the breakup target's right around 12.4 cents in the immediate future. If we break back down, in the grand scheme, you don't want to break below this area. If we break this pattern to the downside at just about 9.2, we'll come back and retest that resistance as support at 7.8 to 8 cent area. Is there anything else anybody would like to add this morning based on what we're seeing? Elmer says, excellent, Tom. Thanks. Good day. Good day to you too, my friend. And honestly, thank you, everybody, for tuning in this morning. I think we had a tremendous live. I think we had a lot of helpers here. Hopefully a few people decided to join the channel. Just subscribing to the channel would be great. Or hopefully some of you have found a better positioning or a better understanding of why you can stay positive despite the bearishness we're in right now. Just remember, when you leave that cup and handle, although it has the illusion on the handle of being bearish, it's a descending wedge. It's a descending wedge. Those descending wedges are ultra bullish. So we prefer that tap down to 86 cents. But remember, if it breaks out over the resistance, it technically could break out again. But I think it still needs to come down and position itself properly. So, but that's about it. I'll try to do about a 10 to 15 minute video later on in the afternoon. Maybe before Michigan starts in the Big Ten Championship, to try to go back to back in the postseason here. Who do we play today? We play Purdue, which I think we're going to beat. But I am biased. But yeah. And to everybody who's here, the core members, thank you so much for the belief you have in me. Thank you for paying attention. Thanks for being in here this Sunday. We had about 110 people for most of the live, and that's great. Especially when we're looking bearish in the short term. It's amazing when you can get that many people just to show up and participate. Oh, yeah, I can do a quick look at Algo since you stuck around, Mick Shoot. And thanks for being in Towns over 1 year. Since you stuck around and asked, I have no problem looking at it. You're very important to me in this community, too. So Algo put in a double top. So it took the elevator up, doing a stairs type of thing for a right shoulder. I'd be a bit surprised if it doesn't move with the rest of the market because it filled out my technical move up out of this descending wedge. My technical move up was about 9.5 cents, which came up perfectly. Gave us a great trade. But now what we're building is we have a bit of a uptrending support, which it's probably going to have to tap to confirm if it wants to continue to come out of here. And then if we look at it from this perspective, our resistance could be building a rising wedge, maybe a rising triangle, but it looks more like, I don't necessarily like that. Let's see if it can hold this, if it comes down to this 889 roughly. Looks like it's building a bit of a rising-ish, wedge-ish kind of, which are not exactly the best for continuation. It's not a flat resistance. Ooh, maybe we'll have to watch XCN as well going forward into that March 27th mainnet update. That's a great comment. Hey, Sola Jeffy, on our next live, will you remind me of that so we can dig into it a little bit? Honestly. Big Dog, love you too, my brother. Oh, thank you for your time as well. Your time is just as important as mine watching this, no doubt about it. Your YouTube just closed for no reason. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. It tends to do that when people are watching. Can we get one more like? We're at 99. 100 would be phenomenal. Totally awesome. It closed for no reason. I am not surprised. I am not surprised. Nick Nack Patty, like you take care as well, my friend. Love for you to look into TAO sometime. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll start to look more at the chart before I come into my next live. Or maybe in my video. Maybe when I do my update video, I'll do about 7-8 minutes on XRP. And then we could tap into a couple minutes on XCN and a couple minutes on TAO. How does that sound to the two of you? Thanks, Carl, for like 100 million times on over 1 year at the I Told You So badge. 101 likes now. What is that? How does that sound? An XRP, XCN, and TAO update later on this afternoon. I could do that. I could definitely do that. I think that'd be a good way to do it, actually. Break it up into a video so everybody can watch it on their own time. Sounds great. Excellent. Good, good, good. Awesome. Why I know now I'm only in XDC. Oh, what you know now you're only in XDC. I understand that, believe me. I'm very, very big proponent of XDC, what's coming in the future, as you guys all know. So, but yeah, that's great. Thank you all so much. We got up to 104 likes. I'm going to let you guys go enjoy your Sunday, and then I'm going to put out that video later on today. It'll be an XRP, XCN, and TAO for the fans of both of those. And then obviously we'll do a 7-minute or so. In the beginning, I'll go over the XRP cup and handle, explain it to everybody thoroughly, and then we'll look at XCN and TAO for the last 5 to 7 minutes of the video. I think that's great. I think that's great comments, and you guys gave me some content that I can work on. Thank you so much. What a blessing you all have been to me. What a blessing. I'll pay $300 for private shorting course. I've often thought about doing a shorting thing like that and teaching. I mean, it would be a different kind of course, and it would have to be in a different way. I don't know about $300. That's quite steep. I don't even think I'm worth that much. Although some of you think so. But yeah, I've thought about doing that as a group. You know, I've thought about doing that more like having a phone call, like via Zoom or something, to where we could all be talking about it in real time. And then putting our minds together, almost like an analytical approach to see what we come up with on a short day-to-day, or from structure to structure. I'm going to try to be absolutely. Oh, one-on-one questions. Oh, absolutely. Obviously, that takes time, but I'm open to it. If you guys want to pay it forward and come up with some kind of thing so that we can do some one-on-one, come up with a real price range, I would be open to it. As you know, I've got a lot of stuff going on. My roof collapsed on me at my house, so I'm I'm not open to more ways of making income right now. I'm not opposed to anything I have to do to make money for my family right now while helping people. Really, that's the truth. Got a lot of stuff going on that doesn't meet the eye right now. But I'm still trying to do it in the positive mindset. Yesterday I had the worst headache known to man because I was so stressed out and I had to bring myself back. Yeah, we had a very bad storm. I had to make an insurance claim. So the class at noon tomorrow, I'm probably going to do it at like 10 a.m. because I have a company coming out at noon to try to see what we can do. But yeah, the windstorm and the combination of the melting snow and ice, it ripped off don't replace all the plywood on the roof, just the first foot. Interesting. Yeah, and I have an asphalt roof, which I'm trying. I mean, I don't want to have an asphalt after this. It was like that when I moved in, but because they put the wood underneath, it completely crumbled. And the wind, it literally pulled it up so hard that it ripped my gutter lining off. My actual roof got stretched out, and then it collapsed in one area. Oh yeah, it's a nightmare. Fortunately, I have homeowners insurance. And I do have a $2,500 deductible, but compared to what it would have cost, $2,500 seems like a blessing. So we'll see what happens on Thursday when they come out. Monday, a company comes out to tell me what we can do, and try to mitigate any further damage. But it's going to be a total roof replacement. It's going to be a total gutter replacement, shingles, and all that crap. But yeah. So yeah. I'll let you guys know further for one-on-one stuff. That's actually a great idea. I would love to do one-on-one interactions with this community. I actually would. So be blessed, everybody. Oh, here's the daily muscle update. As I take Saturday and Sunday off this week because I needed to. After 14 days in a row of working out, which was way